First and foremost, Frank, we appreciate you being generous with your time and taking the time to call into Cage Religion Radio. It's truly an honor to have you joining us.
No worries, man. Thanks for thinking about me.
And now, kicking things off, you were competing at Strikeforce for a good amount of time as a fighter, as well as tackling commentating duties. I'm curious as to how exactly the broadcasting gig initially came about.
Well, I've been commentating actually for some time. Back in the day, I actually commentated for Strikeforce on ESPN2. This was in the mid-'90s, and then I was one of the original commentators for, not the original, but I was one of the second-wave commentators for the UFC in the late '90s. And then, as I got older, I realized I had a gift for gab. When Pro Elite came along the first time, I wanted to expand my brand, and so I actually negotiated a on-air personality / commentator role for myself. And then when Strikeforce, got the assets from Pro Elite, then I just kind of kept rolling that along, and now I got a job of a lifetime with Showtime.
Now, as fans know, you actually announced your retirement in June of last year. I'm curious as to what ultimately led to your decision to retire from active competition. I mean, at this day and age, we see a lot of guys in MMA where, they maybe hang on too long, suffer some tough losses near the end of their careers. But you kind of seem to have had a good grasp on knowing when to call it quits.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a combination of things. One, I was getting old. I could feel myself getting old. My body was getting injured quite a bit. I had a few fairly large injuries. And then the second was, the competition got really, really good. The young guys were just much more complete and had, very, very strong assets both in the standing and the ground. And, I just saw my ability to compete at the highest level was starting to diminish along with my age and my body, and I didn't want to, let the fans down or, get my butt kicked too many times.
Now, changing gears a bit, one of many major news stories to hit in the mixed martial arts world in 2011 was Zuffa basically taking over the reins of Strikeforce. What do you feel the future holds? I mean, some believe that they'll continue on, and others feel that ultimately Strikeforce will be absorbed by the UFC. What are your thoughts?
I think that, if I was going to bet money on it, I would bet that the Strikeforce brand becomes absorbed into the UFC. There's really no need for two major brands out there, especially when your goal is to present one very large brand. So, I think, unfortunately, the time of Strikeforce will come to an end. Who knows when that'll be, but hopefully later rather than sooner.
Theoretically, if Strikeforce is absorbed by the UFC, do you plan to stick around, or is there kind of an exit strategy in place on your part?
Well, I have actually quite a bit of other business things that I do, so I've already sort of put my exit strategy in place. But, if it comes to an end, I'm not the best of friends with Dana White, so I don't think they'll be wanting me in the new show. But, I really believe in the sport of mixed martial arts, so I'll hang around it until, they kick me out.
Now, you basically just touched on my next question, actually. You and Dana White, again, have seemingly had a bit of a rocky relationship, to say the least, in the past. What's your relationship with Dana like at this point?
Well, it's pretty much the same. We've agreed to disagree about a lot of things. He don't really like me, and I don't really like him. That's kind of how we keep it.
Now, another major announcement, actually just announced last month, is the UFC's deal with Fox. UFC, again, being on network television. What exactly does the UFC's deal with Fox mean for the sport? I mean, will this be another big step forward like we saw with the original season of The Ultimate Fighter?
I think so. I think it'll take the UFC brand really to the next level and take the sport, as the UFC owns it, to the next level, and also present it to a brand new fan, because I think a lot of these guys will be seeing the sport, for the first time, and the history shows that people are going to love it.
Now, like you mentioned earlier, you've got a lot on your plate, a lot of business ventures going on. One of those being actually your autobiography titled Uncaged. Again, this isn't your first rodeo in terms of writing, as you've also written the book MMA for Dummies. But this book seems to be kind of more intimate and personal. Talk a bit about the upcoming book.
Sure, it's really, the story of my life as it, lays out for the past 38 years. And, I waited a long time to write my story because I just felt like it was ever changing and there were so many, good and bad things happening in it. It's based really on my personal experiences, of which MMA are, a substantial part of. But, I was a ward of the state by the time I was 12 years old. I went to foster homes, group homes, jails, prisons, and I've really experienced life from top to bottom. And this is my memoir of sorts, for the past 30-plus years.
Now, with that said, is there a particular story that sticks out in your mind that you'd kind of like to share with the listeners?
Most memorable stories? Oh, God, there's so many of them. I think one that is pretty compelling in the story was the time I nearly died of hypothermia. And a very beautiful lady saved me. One of the other ones I can think of is first time I made over $100,000 in Japan, and it was paid in crisp $100 bills in a paper bag. That's always interesting. Yeah, my whole life has just been like that. I never expected to survive past about 18, and I never, in my wildest dreams, would imagine I would achieve the success and have the opportunity in life that I've had, as well as, have such an amazing family and, career.
Now, you've also been very vocal and active in your anti-bullying campaign. How exactly, in your opinion, does mixed martial arts tie into your efforts?
Well, mixed martial arts for me was a catalyst to really learning how to stand up to bullying. It came from having the confidence and the experience of, practicing martial arts, but also teaching and guiding and leading children and learning that, it's about your community and it's about how those children feel about themselves. That's why kids bully other kids. That's why adults bully adults. It's how they feel about themselves. The bullying, the bullier feels a certain way, the bullyee feels a certain way. But it all comes down to how you feel inside. And mixed martial arts is a way to make you feel, strong and confident inside, but also teaches you to know yourself so that you don't feel the need to pick on someone weaker or, draw attention to somebody because they're different, because you may feel a little strange inside. So for me, it's the kind of fabric that holds our community together, and it's a big part of the bullying program.
Now, a few weeks ago, actually, we heard that you were moving your family to New York in an attempt to help legalize the sport of mixed martial arts in the state. It seems as though it gets closer and closer each year, but somehow falls short. What, in your opinion, is the biggest hurdle in finally getting New York to legalize the sport? And again, where do your efforts come into play in all of this?
Well, I hate to inform you, but I'm not going to move to New York. Once we sold Strikeforce to the UFC, really I can see the end of my involvement in the sport coming soon. I'm preparing for my next career, which will be television and entertainment. So I'm actually going to move to Malibu and raise my children on the beach and be an entertainer. But I think one of the big holdups for the sport in New York is, there's a lot of older politicians there who have a very ingrained idea of what sports should be. And this is a very young, it's a very exciting, it's very sexy, it's a very dangerous sport. And I've gone up to Albany, and I've sat down with these guys, and I've sat down with the politicians and the lawmakers, and they just don't get it. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand the sport. And it's such an easy target because you have to do it and be involved in it to really know what it's about. And if you don't, it just looks so dangerous and so, easy to point a finger at and say, that's going to be a problem. And that's what we're facing right now. It's a lack of education and a lot of fear in people's, hearts and minds about what the sport is and isn't.
Now, finally, in closing, what's next for Frank Shamrock?
Next thing for me, I'm in pre-production for my bio documentary, which is sort of an extension of the book. That's a film about my life. And I'm working real hard on my bully program. I'm working real hard on a couple of nonprofits. And today's actually Dad's Day, so I'm spending the entire day with my daughter, a bit from one meeting I had earlier. But for me, it's just about living my life, and oddly enough, I feel like I'm a normal person finally.
Now, before we go, Frank, where can fans find you at online?
I'm everywhere on social networking at Frank Shamrock, and on YouTube, I'm the Frank Shamrock. And hit me up. I live in the social networking world, so I'm always about.
Now, once again, Frank, you've had one of the most memorable careers in the sport. You've got one of the most interesting stories, and it was truly an honor to have you join us, and we appreciate you calling into Cage Religion Radio.
No worries. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.